Out of the Honky Tonk Time Machine, we get to talk to Craig Campbell, known for his big hits, Outskirts of Heaven, my personal favorite, but also Keep Them Kisses Coming, Out of My Head, Family Man, and several others. Craig, we appreciate you coming on. How you doing tonight?
Man, I'm doing fantastic. How about you guys?
I'm doing pretty good. I think we caught you at a pretty interesting time. You're about to go write some more material, it sounds like.
Oh, man, it's a daily grind. You know, it's part of our creative process. So, yeah, we got heading downtown to write a song with some friends of mine that we've actually hit a good stroke here lately. We've been writing some good songs, so we're just going to try to keep that going.
That includes your new single, Never Mind, which I don't want to ask you about just yet. I kind of want to save that for later in the show, and we'll play it as well. But you've done an amazing job writing songs throughout your career. And I read this. You tell me if it's true. Luke Bryan is actually the one who encouraged you to start writing songs, or at least start writing more often.
Yeah, I mean, Luke was very helpful in a lot of ways. I mean, he hired me to play piano for him years ago, and this one day we were sitting having dinner at a barbecue joint, and I was just picking his brain because I knew he was just on the edge of signing a record deal, and all the places we were playing, he was selling them out. I was like, man, how is he doing this? And so I was just picking his brain, and I was just, hey, do you got any advice? And he said, man, he said, are you writing songs? I said, well, I'm not like a full-time thing. I said, you know, I got ideas in my head, but, you know, he says, well, you need to be writing songs. And, man, I took that advice and got back to Nashville and just hit the ground running, brother.
Did you know Luke before you got to Nashville? I know you're both Georgia guys, or did you not meet him until you got there?
Yeah, I didn't meet Luke until I got to Nashville. We just happened to have a mutual friend that knew that Luke was looking to add a piano player to his band, and they threw my name in the hat, and he hired me. I played probably, I don't know, a dozen shows with him or so for about a year. Speaking
of Georgia, tell me a little bit about growing up in Georgia, and you know, who influenced you, who'd you grow up listening to around there?
Man, I grew up, you know, probably I guess my earlier years, Southern Baptist or Southern Gospel was playing in my house at all times. We had little radios spread out throughout the house, and they were all on the same station. So I grew up at an early age listening to Southern Gospel, and I played piano for my church for a long time. But you know, when my brother got his driver's license, he rocked my world, man. He plugged in a Randy Travis record, and then it, you know, Shenandoah, and then Tracy Lawrence, and then I was like, well, I need to get more of this in my life. And so when he was driving us back and forth to school, so that's when my love for country music just was born. You know, with Clint Black and Travis Tritt, Alan Jackson, the class of '89, if that's what you want to call it. But yeah, that's when my world got turned upside down, and that's when I realized I loved country music from that point. And then, you know, a couple of years later, I made a decision that that's what I wanted to do for a living.
I always wondered if Alan Jackson was required listening if you liked country music and you were from Georgia. So,
well, yeah, him. You know, but Travis Tritt was probably my favorite. You know, I love Travis, just the idea that he could play multiple instruments at a master level. He could write songs. He could sing country, gospel, bluegrass, rock and roll, southern rock. He was just good at all of that. And that's like, man, I just want to be half as good as Travis, you know?
We're going to play all of Craig Campbell's hits, right? But we're also going to play some of Craig Campbell's influence. So what would you say your favorite Travis Tritt song is? If you had to, I know I'm putting you on the spot, and that's a tough question, but if you had to narrow it down, do you have a favorite Tritt song?
Well, I would say of all time, probably Anymore would be my favorite song of his. But that entire record that Anymore was on, the It's All About the Change record, was just a big deal to me. It had Here's a Quarter on there. It's All About the Change. Anymore, just hit after hit after hit, and it just was a big influence on me, that entire album.
Yeah, that's good stuff. He's got a new song out too that we've been playing. It's called "Smoke in a Bar." It's really good. Also, I don't know if you've had a chance to check that out yet. So. Oh
yeah, I've checked it out for sure. Yeah, I keep my eyes on Travis pretty good.
I bet so. He's a Georgia guy, too. We're talking to Craig Campbell tonight on K103, and you mentioned a few of those 90s country guys. You actually played in the band for one of them. You traveled with Tracy Byrd for a little while, didn't you?
Yep. I was Tracy Byrd's piano player for about a year and a half back in 2005, 2006. A lot of fun. That was a cool experience for me, just being able to sit back and just kind of watch. I knew that I wanted to be the front man at some point, but it was a great experience just to kind of sit back and watch and see how that goes down from a sideman's point of view. And so yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Your first hit comes out in 2010, Family Man, off your self-titled debut album. We're going to kind of get into some of these songs a little bit, and if you have any stories behind them, we'd love to hear them. But what was that time like when Family Man's out on the radio and doing pretty well for you?
Oh, it was one of those, like, I always my goal was to be able to play music and make a living doing it. And, to have songs on the radio was just, for me, icing on the cake. But Family Man was, I don't know that we had planned on that being the very first single from the get-go, but when we went in and recorded all those songs, it just stood out. And it was like, what do we want to introduce Craig to the country music world with? And, what do we want them to know about him that they need to know right away? So Family Man was the one. And I think it was the best choice that we could even think of. So I was very proud of that song, still am. And so that was that song was and will always be special.
You followed up with Fish and When I Get It the next year in 2011, and both of those are off your debut album as well. How much has your music changed since then? It's only been 11 years, but then you think about, man, it's been 11 years already. A lot's happened since 2010. So has your music changed at all since that first album?
Well, it did, because I was allowing the record labels to dictate what I recorded and what I wrote, and the songs that I chose and the songs that they chose. They shoved down my throat. And so now that I'm not with a record label, that I can go back to doing what I want to do and how I want to do it. So there was a time where I was recording songs based on trying to be successful through the eyes of my record label, and that just didn't work. And so now my approach is to just go back to what I do, what I love, and recording songs that get me fired up. So it has changed, but it's actually changed back to, so now that when I do record and when I play and I go out and I do shows, I get excited.
I heard that was actually a promise that you made to yourself, that you weren't going to record a song that you weren't passionate about anymore, right?
That's correct. I mean, I can sit and run down a list of songs songs that I released that that I did not get passionate about. And at the end of the day, when it comes to radio, we are salesmen. And if I don't believe in my product, then I'm not going to be able to sell it very well. And that was very evident in a couple of songs that I released. So that's not going to be the case anymore.
I was talking to Leroy Parnell about that same thing, and he said a lot of the same things that you were saying right now. Is it tricky, though, if you release a song that maybe the fans liked, but you weren't particularly fond of, and then do you continue to play that song? How do you balance that?
Well, fortunately, I haven't recorded and released any songs that my fans love that I didn't like.
Okay, well, that's good.
But I have recorded songs that I love that the fans didn't necessarily like, but that goes back to me being able to sleep at night. I got to be happy with this. My wife has to be happy with this. I have to be behind every piece of music that I release to the world, just because if it doesn't work and people don't love it, there's nobody to blame but me.
Tell me about Out of My Head, which came out the next year in 2012. This is off your second album, Never Regret. It was another top 15 single for you, and it was one that I always enjoyed.
Yeah, no, I will go to my grave saying that song was a big old hit. That we just ran into a lot of hurdles with it. It took a long time on the radio. It was on the chart for 56 weeks. I think it just legitimately just ran out of steam, and no matter how awesome the song was. But I picked it. That goes back to songs that get me fired up. That was one of those songs that I picked. And my producer at the time, he was like, he didn't love it as much as I did. And then we went in to record, and we recorded 5 songs. We had time to do one more, and he said, "Which one do you want to do?" I said, "I want to do Out of My Head, man. I've been screaming it." And we started tracking it. And then, about halfway through the session, he turns around and looks at me. He's like, "Man, I think this is the one." I said, "I've been telling you, bro." And so I believe I love that song. And a lot of people may or may not know this, but Cole Swindell is a co-writer on that song, and he's a buddy of mine. But first time I heard it, I knew it was a hit, and I wanted to record it, and that's what we did.
I did not know Cole Swindell was a writer on that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then Keep Them Kisses Coming. That's got a really interesting story behind it, and I'll let you tell it. But you had to keep it on the charts. So I'll let you kind of tell the story behind that.
Oh, that song's got a lot of stories. All of my songs up to this point had taken a long time on the chart, and it was doing the same thing with Keep Them Kisses Coming. And even back when Out of My Head was over with, we decided that we wanted to do something like an up-tempo love song, and I had Keep Them Kisses Coming, and we were like, let's go. It was struggling, going up in the 50s, and then kind of getting into the high 40s on the chart, and we're doing our thing, and we're like, okay, here we go. It's going to be another year. And then it got chosen for a program song with iHeart called On the Verge, which is in our world is a big deal. And that song went from 44 to 30 in 1 week on the chart. So we bypassed the 30s, which, that's where I always had most of my trouble. But yeah, man, 30s, 20s, it's in the teens, it's rocking. It has all the signs of being a big old number one song. And then I get a phone call that my record label's closing. Mm. And that is not a phone call you want to get when your song is racing up the chart. So a couple of days go by, and I'm like, oh gosh, what do I do? And started getting calls from radio, like, what's the plan? And I was like, hey, just because I don't have a record label doesn't mean this is not a hit, guys, So then I started calling radio, because some of those stations were backing off of it. And they were like, okay, I guess if the record label's done, the song is done. So I had to call and say, nope, I'm still here. I'm still doing my thing. This song is a hit. Keep playing it, and I was able to get that song from 13 to number 7 all by myself. Yeah.
And that's nearly impossible to do without a record label financially backing it and having a team out there calling radio stations. As somebody who takes those calls, I understand what kind of goes in behind that. For you to basically be doing that by yourself, just kind of hitting the streets, if you will, or hitting the phones, that's pretty impressive to get that song up to number 7 without the label.
Well, yeah, and I think it was just a testament of the relationship that I had formed with radio. I mean, it was like, and they knew that it wasn't my fault, and they knew that I kind of got shafted a little bit, and so they were like, "Dude, we got you." But then, once you get to the top, you're getting close to the top 5. That's when it really counts to have, a lot of money and a lot of planning and all that. And I just didn't have that. Yeah. And so number 7, I was super happy with that. To be out there all by myself.
Yeah, it helps though that it was a good song too. It's not going to climb that high if it wasn't, and it certainly was. Right. A fun one too. So then what happens after the label closes? What was kind of your next step from there?
Well, I knew I was paying attention. It took me a minute to figure out what was going on because my record label was trying to hold me in my contract, because even though they were closing, they were still like a company, and they were keeping me under my contract. And then so it took a while to get out of that. But in the meantime, I was keeping my eye on like Broken Bow. I was watching Broken Bow, and I noticed that they had signed a couple of acts that had success. But then when they signed with Broken Bow, they had huge success. And I was like, well, if they can do that for them, then they can do that for me. And I was coming off of a top 10 song, and it just the momentum was there. I went and had a meeting with Broken Bow, and they said, yeah, let's do this. And so I signed with them about 10 months later.
You'd put an album out with them, and then you would eventually leave, and that's when you started doing your own thing.
I'm 100% independent. I don't have to ask permission to do anything from anybody except for my wife. So I'm good to go.
So then, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but has it been a blessing in disguise for you?
Oh, it has. When me and Broken Bow split up, it was like, man, you spend all this time trying to get a record deal, and then you never think that you would be this excited to not have one. So we love it. Like I said, we make our own decisions. We pull the trigger, and these days you don't really need a record label to do what you need to do with music. Record labels do help with radio and being a bank, but fortunately, I've had a little bit of success to be able to fund my own career at the moment. So it has been a blessing.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about Outskirts of Heaven, though, which is a song that you recorded while you were with Broken Bow. It's my favorite song of yours. I'm sure you're aware that St. Jude uses it as one of their story songs nationwide for everybody's radiothons, so that means we use it too. What do you remember about recording that one, and how has it impacted you since you put it out 5 years ago?
Well, I knew when we wrote it was going to be a hit with somebody, because I wrote it and I knew I'd written a good song. Me and my co-writer, and then I started playing it out live, and it just started getting a great reaction. And so I went to the record label and I said, "Hey, I know y'all picked that last one." I said, "But we got to put this one out. We have to." And my president of the label, he's like, "Okay, let's just hope it streams and downloads." I'm like, "Okay, I get it. That's what you're worried about. You're worried about the business." I said, "I'm worried about the quality of music." So we put it out, and all that stuff they were talking about, the streaming and the downloads and the testing and the all that, it was like gangbusters. So I'm very proud of that song, and the fact that it's after I put it out, that all the stories that I've gotten from people about how it helped them deal with either losing somebody they loved or they had lost somebody they loved, in the afterlife kind of stuff. So I'm proud of that song in the fact that it's been there to help and to help people heal.
What went through your mind when you heard St. Jude wanted to use it to help, raise money for children's cancer research?
Well, man, that was kind of an odd deal. Like they called and said, "Hey, we want to use it." And I was like, "Well, I think this is a good song for that." So I had to go in and record my story part, but just without music. And then they took all it and placed it in the song. And so I kind of forgot about it. And then one day somebody calls me, one of my record guys, and he's like, "Dude, have you heard Outskirts, the St. Jude version?" I said, "No." And he sent it to me. And dude, I got to, man, I mean, it's powerful.
Yeah.
It's sad.
Yeah.
It's sad, but it's powerful. And I was very, very honored that they would want to use that song. But at the same time, I'm proud that it works the way it does when it comes to St. Jude.
Can't listen to it without a tear coming to your eye. We run our radio.
Yeah, it's rough. It's rough in a good way,
Every March we're playing that since it came out, or since they did their version of it. They keep bringing it back every year, and every year I'm like, "Oh, that one again." So yeah, it's left an impact. Another one we're hoping that's going to leave an impact is your current single you got out right now. I've listened a few times and I like it a little bit better every time I hear it. It's called "Never Mind." Tell me about that one and how'd you come up with it?
Well, man, I had that title for a long time in my phone. I was like, man, I love the double meaning of certain phrases or the words that sound like other words that mean different, spelled different kind of thing. Like family, comma, man,
mm-hmm.
family man. I love writing those kind of songs. So I had this title, "Never Mind, You Were Never Mine," and I was like, that's pretty cool, but how do we write it? And I never could figure it out. Just didn't add up. And then one day I think it came to me while I was asleep. I woke up and I said, "Never mind that we did all this and we did all that." And I thought everything was great. I thought this is it, but you were never mind. Never mind that all this happened. So then I threw it out to my co-writers and they loved it. So we wrote it. But it wasn't until the end. Matter of fact, it might have been like a few days later, Jim McCormick, one of my co-writers, texted and said, "Hey, I think right before the hook, you were never mine, we need to say, never mind that I was all yours." Just kind of seal it up. And I said, "That's genius. Let's do that." So he came up with the "never mind that I was all yours" like days later. And but when we got done with it and we demoed it, it sounded amazing. And it's just one of them songs that I love. My wife loved it. My manager loved it. And we just said, hey, let's go. Let's do this.
It's an awesome play on words. It's a fun song to listen to, and we're actually going to debut it here on our radio station to close out the show tonight. Nevermind from Craig Campbell. And yeah, it's Nevermind, M-I-N-E, but obviously the play on words is the Nevermind with M-I-N-D. It's really cool. Craig, what do you got coming up next? Anything big on the horizon for you? You going to be able to tour a little bit more this summer and everything like that?
Yeah, man. Dates are coming in slowly. It's a lot better than it was last year. So we're blessed to see some dates being added. A lot of acoustic shows, just me and my guitar. A lot of full band shows are coming in. And making music. I'm hoping to put out. I'm working on a double album. Hopefully, be putting this thing out sometime towards the end of summer. A lot of music I've been sitting on for a long time, but like I said, earlier that, I can do whatever I want now. And if I want to put out 30 songs, I'll put out 30 songs at one time, so that's the plan. And that's sometime towards the end of summer. And me and my wife, we're also working on, opening a coffee shop here in Eagleville, Tennessee, where we live.
Cool.
And, hopefully that thing's going to be open in November. So we got a lot going on.
Very, very cool. And Nevermind, you can pick up wherever you download music right now, can't you, Craig?
Absolutely, it is there. If you want to hear it, all you got to do is look for it. Craig Campbell, Nevermind.
All right, go look for it right now. Craig, it's been a pleasure talking to you and catching up. We sure appreciate your time, and we wish you good luck the rest of the way. Okay.
Right on, man. Appreciate y'all.